What's up, everybody? Welcome once again to this installment of Renegades Reviews. Third episode here on the relaunch, the reboot, the rediscovery, if you will. Once again, I'm probably going to be saying this a lot here in these first few episodes, but I'm thankful that you guys are back with me here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, watching me do my thing again. I'm sure you guys would rather me talk about wrestling, but as you all should know by now, wrestling is kind of a thing in the past for me. That's why when you see the stuff on the Jeff Meacham Network, the Dads on Wrestling episodes, we do top 10s about pay-per-views and topics that I can actually be informed and carry on about, because it's just not something that interests me that much anymore. But anyways, movies, that is what interests me. After a long day at work, I like to come home, go to my room, pop something onto the TV, whether it's a DVD, a Blu-ray, something on streaming, and just unwind. Let the stress of the day just kind of exit the body and live vicariously through the characters on the television. I have an extensive movie collection, as I've mentioned, plus, you've got Netflix, you've got Redbox, you've got Vudu, you've got Disney Plus, you've got Tubi, you've got Crackle, all kinds of stuff at my disposal. So I figured I would resurrect the Renegades Reviews, bring you some classic content until such time when things open up out here in Southern California and I can get back out to the local theaters and see some new releases. January, on the Jeff Meacham Network, we're doing the top 10 Tom Hanks movies. So I figured what better jump off point than to do Tom Hanks movies for the month of January here on the channel, since I firmly believe there is no such thing as a bad Tom Hanks movie. And this movie is definitely near the top of the list on my favorites. That, of course, as I said in the intro, is the 1988 classic, Big. Starring Tom Hanks, obviously, as Josh Baskin, Elizabeth Perkins as his love interest Susan, Robert Loggia as Mr. McMillan, John Hurd as Paul, one of Josh's rivals, John Lovitz as Scotty, a gentleman that he meets in the mailroom at the computer department there when he first starts out, Mercedes Ruehl as Josh's mom, and the movie directed by the late, great Penny Marshall. So let's get right into it. Hopefully a lot of you have seen Big, as it is one of Tom Hanks's classic performances. As a matter of fact, it was the first one he received an Oscar nomination for, because the role was just that well portrayed. He walked the fine line between comedy with a little bit of drama thrown in there, and he just played the ultimate teenager. Even though he was 30-something years old at the time, he played a great kid, grown-up kid, which of course is the premise of the film. The film begins with young Josh playing a computer game, and his character dies after he hesitates too long, while his parents are trying to call him to take out the trash and do chores that a young child would do. We then see him and his best friend Billy out amongst the town. We're also introduced to Cynthia, a young girl about Josh's age, maybe just a little bit older, as she is taller than him. who Josh has a crush on. Later that evening, Josh and Billy are communicating back and forth from their houses over walkie-talkies. And Billy tells Josh that, she's single. She doesn't have a boyfriend or anything, which of course makes Josh kind of giddy because he's got a serious crush on her. The next night, Josh and his family are at a carnival that's in town. And Josh wants to go on this roller coaster that even his mom thinks is too scary. She's like, I don't know about all this. But Josh is intent to go on it, especially when he sees Cynthia already in line to go on it. He wants to impress her. Make him feel a little older, a little bit more mature than what he is, so that he can, get close to her. When Josh gets to the front of the line, the attendant unfortunately then tells Josh that he's too small for the ride. He's defeated. He's been humiliated in front of the girl that he likes. He sulks away and just starts wandering the carnival as alone, just taking it all in, trying to figure out his next move, if he's going to have a next move. He starts walking down this line of arcade games, and at the very end of the line, all by itself, is this fortune-telling machine called Zoltar. Zoltar speaks. The lights are on, the game and everything. So Josh walks up to it, reads the instructions, puts a quarter in the machine, and nothing happens. So he starts smacking the machine, gets it to register. Reads the instructions, about aim the ramp to Zoltar's mouth, press the button to release your quarter. Quarter rolls down the ramp, and the idea is to get the quarter into Zoltar's mouth. If you do, your wish comes true. So when the machine tells Josh to make a wish, he wishes that he was big, because he was just embarrassed for not being tall enough. Quarter shoots down the ramp right into Zoltar's mouth. Little card comes out the machine. Your wish is granted. Then Josh notices something. The machine's not plugged in. That's why it didn't work at first. So he doesn't think anything of it. Whatever. Wasted a quarter on this game. Nothing's going to happen. It wasn't even plugged in. Goes home, goes to sleep. Wakes up the next morning as a grown man. About 30 years old. Freaks out. He doesn't know what happened to him overnight. He's trying to put everything together. Runs out of the house. Goes to find the Zoltar machine, but the carnival is already cleared out. Left town. Goes back home. Mom sees him. Grown up. Freaks out. Wants to know who this stranger is that's coming into her house. So he turns around and leaves. Goes to the school. Finds Billy. Tries to convince Billy that he's who he says he is. Billy doesn't believe it at first. But then when he starts singing their song together, it's how he gets Billy to realize that it really is Josh, just grown up now. So Billy and Josh have to figure out a game plan now. Until we can figure out where this Zoltar machine is, got to try to live life. But you can't go back home because Mom's freaking out. So they go to New York. They get Josh a room at a hotel, the St. James Hotel, which Billy says, this should be good. St. James, it's religious. Little do they know that there appear to be prostitutes, drug dealers all throughout the hotel. It's definitely a seedy neighborhood. You hear gunshots and fighting going on in the streets below. Josh, having just been 13 years old, is now having a breakdown. He is freaking out, crying in his bed. Billy keeps going back and forth from school so that he can try to help him. They decide that Josh needs to get a job. Finds a job in the computer industry for a toy company. Computers and toys. Two things that kids love. So he went for the job, interviewed, gets the job. Then he starts to meet some of the people around the office. That's where John Lovitz comes into play, Scotty. That's where Paul comes into play, played by John Hurd. That's where Elizabeth Perkins comes into play, the role of Susan. We even get a very, very brief part from James Eckhouse, who would go on in a couple years to be Jim Walsh on Beverly Hills 90210. Real bit part is Josh's initial supervisor in the computer department. After about a week on the job, they come around, give him his first paycheck, $187. He's flipping out. He's like, whoa, this is a lot of money. The next day, he goes out, have a little fun on the town. FAO Schwartz, he's a big kid, so he's playing with the toys around the store, ends up bumping into his boss. They start bonding, walking around talking about toys, which of course leads to the iconic scene from this movie. Robert Loggia and Tom Hanks on the piano on the floor, playing Heart and Soul and Chopsticks together. After all that and that bonding, he ends up getting promoted because Mr. McMillan sees a little something in Josh. He sees something different. Can't quite put his finger on what it is, the fact that it's an actual kid in a grown-up body, but he knows there's something different. So he promotes him to basically a toy tester. And now Josh gets to play with all these toys before they come out and try to come up with the pros and cons and figure out how they're going to market these properly. He even ends up getting a raise, which allows him to get a penthouse apartment with all kinds of cool arcade game consoles and toys scattered about it. And this is when the love becomes to start developing between him and Susan. Susan was with Paul, but now Susan's ready to move on. She sees the new shiny toy and decides that she wants to go and start talking to Josh. He even ends up blowing off Billy, his best friend, for her, which sets off a fight between the two of them. And now Josh has to recuperate. He ends up going back to his hometown, walking around. He sees guys from his baseball team practicing. He realizes how much he misses home. He's enjoying this life, but he misses home. So, of course, now he has to tell Susan the truth about him. Susan doesn't want to hear the truth. She doesn't even believe the truth. Which leads to a fight between the two of them. Eventually, Josh finds the Zoltar machine, goes off to make another wish so that he could be his old self again. And it's at that point that Susan realizes that everything he told him was the truth. She offers Josh a ride back home, drops him off, and as he walks away, he changes from Tom Hanks' Josh back into the young boy, virtually in front of her eyes. This film is like I said, it's definitely one of the Tom Hanks masterpieces, if you will. I don't see how anybody can really say an ill word about the movie Big. Penny Marshall did a great job directing this movie. She picked the absolute perfect guy to play Josh as an adult. You know, everyone talks about the girl next door. Tom Hanks really comes off as the boy next door in this film. I am going to give this film 4 stars out of 5. You know, you really can't go wrong with this film. It's an all-star cast. It got him an Oscar nomination. And it definitely set up, much as Splash did, set up the launching pad for his ascension to the other great movies of his that would come within the 90s. Films like Philadelphia, Forrest Gump, A League of Their Own, Apollo 13, That Thing You Do, Saving Private Ryan, and the list goes on and on and on. What do you guys think of the classic Big? Do you feel it's a great movie? Do you feel it's a little on the overrated side? Let me know. Leave your thoughts in the comment box below. As always, I will try to reply to them. I will try to be interactive. Hopefully, when this movie review goes live, the age of Corona will have ended and we will be getting back on with our lives. Excuse me, but as I've told you over the last couple movie reviews, I'm canning a bunch of these now so that in case anything happens with me, my job gets busy, my personal life gets out of hand, the coronavirus, the age of Corona, as I like to call it, gets even worse. You've got a whole arsenal of reviews lined up, ready to go for your entertainment. Let's try to get hashtag Casa D18 Studios, hashtag Renegade Reviews, hashtag Renegade Returns, any of those things. Let's try to get trending onto Twitter. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatBoyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. I do have the majority of this year already planned out, but please leave me suggestions, especially if things have started to open up by the time this goes live. I would love to know what kinds of movies you would like for me to review, what new releases you'd like for me to talk about, what classic movies you'd like for me to talk about. Maybe I'll end up putting together a special month based off of your guys' suggestions, a fan mail month, if you will. Once things start to open up, I do plan to do a double feature day where you'll get a classic film that is geared to the theme of the specific month, like this month is Tom Hanks movies. And then you'll also get a new release movie, something that's current and fresh and in theaters for me to talk about so that you don't have to wait forever to see me talk about a current movie. So I do plan to give you a double feature day, probably on the weekend. I'm leaning towards either Saturday or Sunday because Friday is usually new release day. And I really don't like dealing with the crowds on opening nights. I prefer to go first showing of the day. So I would probably go on either a Saturday or Sunday, catch an early showing, review it, and then have it go up the next day. So we're looking at one of those 2 days to do that. But give me ideas, give me suggestions, leave your thoughts in the comment box below. And until tomorrow, when I will be back to bring you yet another Renegade review of a classic Tom Hanks film, I am the Renegade J.J. Williams, and I will see you guys next time.